כן, ועכשיו אנחנו נקרא בספר תלמוד 10 הספירות.
And now we're going to read in the study of the 10 Sfirot, volume 1, part 4. We are reading Inner Light, item 8. But before we enter the study together, we will read the words of the Ari, item 5. 3 discernments in the 10 Sfirot, Keter, the other Sfirot, and Malchut. Keter left a record and not a vessel. The other Sfirot left records and vessels, and the Malchut left a vessel and not a record. Item 5. So did all the Sfirot do, except for Keter, which left the record for Chokhmah. However, he did not make a vessel, since when the rest of the Sfirot rise up by striking in what is above them, and the striking of the record became the vessels. But the Keter had no one to strike his record as he rose. For this reason, his vessel was still not completed. Thus, Keter left a record and not a vessel, while the rest of the Sfirot left a record and a vessel, and Malchut left a vessel and not a record. We're going to move now to Rabash lesson.
And so were all the Sfirot made besides Keter. Item 8. Meaning, that record became a vessel. What does it mean besides Keter? Another word, besides Keter, which left the record for Chokhmah, but did not make a vessel. Interpretation. That record became a vessel of the male of light of Chokhmah. So, what is he saying? He's asking here, what does it mean besides Keter, which left the record for the purpose of Chokhmah, but did not make a vessel? What is the difference between the records and the sparks which come by striking? We learned the records is what was left from the first expansion. There was the light of Keter in the vessel of Keter, light of Chokhmah in the vessel of Chokhmah, light of Binah, etc. What did we learn about the sparks? When the light of phase 3 comes, which is the level of Chokhmah, he wanted to shine in the vessel of Malchut, which was a record of the phase of Keter. So sparks fell. What sparks? Chokhmah in the vessel of Keter. It's a vessel for the females of Parzuf Ab. What are males and what are females? We need to know. We learned that Parzuf Ab emerged on the record of clothing of the level of Keter, phase 4, and on a record of coarseness. A clothing is called male. There's no screen and coarseness there. Females means there is coarseness and a screen. but the last phase is lost. It follows that when I speak of coarseness of the vessels, I need for the light of Chokhmah to shine in the vessel of Keter, light of Bina in the vessel of Chokhmah, meaning a higher degree, the lower degree enters as coarseness. But when I speak of the records, they are in the light of Keter. That can be only clothing. It becomes only a preparation for the males of Parzuf Ab. This is what he says here. Meaning, that record became a vessel of the male of the light of Chokhmah, in the Keter of the second expansion, and I would explain what is the light of Chokhmah. It means not for the light of Chokhmah, for Parzuf Ab, which is called Chokhmah. And as the Ari says, from Keter, which left the record for the purpose of Chokhmah, meaning in Parzuf Ab. But he didn't make a vessel, meaning he didn't make a vessel for the female, which is a lower degree. But the record is the same, except the vessel was not in the higher phase than itself. So it would diminish it. 9. But it didn't make a vessel. The Ari already wrote above that the vessels of Akudim themselves were made from the light of Ab, which remained from the light of the expansion of its goof. Let's take it slowly. He asks here, but he didn't make a vessel. The question is, if the Keter had no vessel, where did Keter shine? And that's why he wants to interpret. It does not mean vessels of Parzuf Galgalta. It means other vessels. That's what it says here. The Ari wrote above already that the actual vessels of Akudim, meaning Parzuf Galgalta, were made from the coarse light that remains from the light of the departure of his goof. After the light departed, there's already recognition of the vessel of Parzuf Galgalta. By this you understand that it does not speak of the vessel of Keter itself, of Parzuf Galgalta, but it means, what vessels are we talking about? The vessels of the second expansion of Parzuf Ab, which comes next after the departure, where there is a vessel of Keter, the male, 4 of clothing, and the phase of a female, 3 of coarseness, and also in the vessel of Chokhmah, and Bina, and Yesod, and Malchut. There's an opportunity here to discern the clothing and coarseness. This is what the Ari speaks of here. The vessels of the males from there, meaning the 4th of clothing, were made from the records that remained in the vessels of Akudim, meaning from the tastes. And the vessels of the females, meaning from the coarseness, were made from the sparks that fall from the reflected light that descends into the vessels of Akudim here, meaning the light of Chokhmah in the vessel of Keter, the light of Bina in the vessel of Chokhmah. It says the Keter left the record for the purpose of Chokhmah, meaning the Keter of the male, the light of Chokhmah, in the vessel of Keter of the second expansion. We also need to interpret. It means the coarse light, otherwise there's no meaning. But it didn't make a vessel, meaning for the female that's there. So we need to begin in inner light, item 10. Here, all that it says here, that when the light departs, there is a rule. The light leaves a record in its vessel. And here, he says, there's one who has a record and has no vessel, a vessel without a record. What is a vessel? What is a record? What does it mean not having a record? First of all, the light of Malchut has no record. Since Malchut has nothing of her own, so it doesn't have direct light. That's why he does not leave a record in Malchut. When we say that you have to revive the vessel, so the Ari says the record that remained from the light of Yesod shines into the vessel of Malchut. One. But Malchut did leave a vessel. What is a vessel? Here he comes and tells us, we're speaking of vessels here. For the second Parzuf, called Parzuf Ab. Why do we need a vessel here? So he says this. There is a rule that a new degree that shines takes the empty vessels that remained from the upper degree, that when the lights departed from there, and fills them with its own light. You find that Parzuf Ab, which takes the vessel of Keter, for example, only light of Chokhmah rises there. How can the light of Chokhmah come into the vessel of Keter? There is no equivalence. This is why we learn, by example, let's say in this way. First, there was a coupling on the vessel of Malchut called fourth level of coarseness, Parzuf Ta'amim, tastes, the level of Keter. The light departed. A record remained in phase 4 throughout the level. Then there was a coupling on phase 3. Light shone, and that light, which shines after the taste, he calls it descending reflected light. Why? We'll see later. That light wants to enter to the place of the coupling, where there was the vessel of Malchut, where there was the level of Keter. He doesn't want to receive it. He says the degree is more important. Compared to the degree of Keter, he has a record, and he's only the degree of Chokhmah. Not to receive it. He's full of the light that comes now. He needs fourth, but it's only a record. The light that comes now is real light. Therefore, through this striking, he says, sparks fell into the vessel of Malchut, which is called vessels that previously had the level of Keter. You find that now there is the light of Chokhmah in the vessel of Keter. It's a preparation. Afterwards, when you come in Parzuf Ab, when light of Chokhmah come in Parzuf Ab, in the vessel of Keter, the vessels already have a preparation of Chokhmah in the vessel of Keter. And why does he call it sparks? So he said, what are sparks in corporeality? The Zohar says, when you strike with a hammer on steel, sparks fly out and immediately quench. If it shines temporarily, it's called a spark, and then it departs. Since that light, that reflected light, that shines in the vessel of Malchut, which had a record from the level of Keter, and now that light received, which comes anew, which is real light, actual light. But afterwards, we learn that phase 3, the light of Chokhmah, also departs. Where now it is during the refinement, and afterwards only the light of Bina shines. You find that the third light, which was Chokhmah, now there is no light. It's only a record, as there was a record from the phase of Keter. then she no longer receives that light. Why? Because her record of phase 4 returns. You find that that light has quenched already. There is no light. That light doesn't exist anymore. That's why he calls it sparks. But that's not the point. It's only the meaning of the words. What about the meaning of sparks? The main point is how the vessel was made. The upper degree, which is Chokhmah, shines in the vessel of Malchut, in the vessel of Keter. And then the light of Bina shines in the vessel of Chokhmah. That's a preparation for the vessel for the second degree. He comes and tells us Malchut is called 4. So there's a striking from 3 to 4. Well, 4 is more important. Then when it's refined, the third is refined, and the 2 shines, then the 2 strikes the 3, because 3 is more important. He doesn't want to receive it. So again, you have the light of Bina and the vessel of Chokhmah. Then, when 2 departs as well, you have 1. And 1 also departed from the coarseness from the root coarseness, Keter. It's a smaller degree. 1 does not want to receive it, so it strikes it. You find that the light of Malchut is called the vessel of Zeranpin. But afterwards, when Keter is also refined, who strikes it? That's why he says that Keter has no one to strike it. There's no degree higher than it to diminish it. Clear? Now we will learn item 10 in inner light. What does it say in item 10? It says this. Since, look on top. Since, in the words of the Ari, since in the rest of the Sfirot, when they rise up through a striking in what is above them, so they're striking, meaning the light raises a record up and strikes the record. And strikes again. Since the rest of the Sfirot, when they rise up through the striking in what is above them, the rest of the Sfirot, when they rise up through the striking in what is above them, and the striking of the record does not want to receive. The striking takes place, and that's why the vessels are made. Yud in inner light, meaning through the coupling by striking.
What's difficult here? According to the rest of the Sfirot, when they rise above through the striking that which is above them, and the striking of the records, there are 2 records? 2 strikings? What is the meaning there are 2 strikings? Hence he interprets so below. Meaning, through the striking on the screen, the direct light on the screen, in the phase that is above the vessel that was emptied by the light. You see what he's interpreting there, Moshe? He says the striking of coupling that was made there, after, which is in the degree above them, to who? Above to phase 4. That a striking, that a coupling was made on phase 3, extends and descends the reflected light to the vessel that was emptied. Meaning, after the light was departed from the vessel of Malchut, why was the light departed from the vessel of Malchut? Since it was refined in the screen from phase 4 to phase 3, which is Yesod, and became the coupling for the vessel of Yesod. That's one striking. Now, Here, then, the reflected light from this coupling descends to the Malchut that emptied from light, and this is where he says that through the striking that which is above them, meaning here the meaning is not the striking or the beating between reflected light and the record, but what is the meaning here? The direct light on the screen. That's where he says, through the beating and what's above them, the reflected light extends to the vessel below, where there's a record that does not want to receive it, and later it will be again a beating between the reflected light that's descending and the record of the vessel. 20. And the beating or the striking of the record, here the meaning is the second striking. The record which remained in the vessel which was emptied, meaning phase 4 we'll say, beats in its reflecting light which descends to its vessel. Why? Because this phase 4, is opposite to the reflected light that is descending, as mentioned above. And through this striking, they were born and taken out the sparks from the reflected light descending and falling into the emptying vessel. And from these sparks that fell into the second vessel, the vessels became ready. The second parzuf called Ab. What's written in 30 above? She became in this discernment of vessels. Why? Which vessels? Meaning the vessels for the sake of the vessels of the second expansion, called the second parzuf Ab. But the vessels of Akudim from the vessels of parzuf Galgalta, which are called the first expansion, became the course light, or the light of Av, as the Ari mentions. He says to us, during the first expansion, called the first parzuf after the restriction, which is called the parzuf Galgalta of Ak. At the time that the direct light illuminated in reflected light, there's no recognition of a vessel there. Since both are in this action, without reflected light, there's no direct light. Without direct light, there's no reflected light. Hence, they are both important, and there's no recognition of a vessel there. Afterwards, when there was the beating between the inner and surrounding light, the light departed, the direct light, and what remains is the reflected light. This coarse light that remains is considered as a vessel. It turns out that the vessels above the departure of the lights became vessels. There becomes a recognition of a vessel there, meaning the vessels of Akudim became a coarse light. And this Ab has two meanings. The light of Ab, when it illuminates and is called a vessel, the light of Ab has no vessel. And after the departure, it becomes a recognition of a vessel. And now that there's phase 3, the vessels are ready for parzuf Ab. What's the difference between this and that? Before we said that direct light, which is called the fine light, illuminates in the coarse light. So it's already illuminating, and the coarse light receives it. Therefore, what is guf? The expansion of the light from Peh below, which is called toch. The lights come within the vessels. This is called that the direct light shines the fine light in the coarse light. This is phase 1, where there's a distinguishing of vessels. We should also discern that after the refinement of the screen, the light departs, the direct light, the coarse light remains below, So the coarse light is called Kli, vessel. In relation to who? Towards Partzuf Galdalta, where the light departs from it and it remains an empty vessel, and this is called a vessel. Now he speaks about the third stage in the vessel, meaning that by the striking of the reflected light that descends with the record that remained in the lower degree, which is higher than the descending reflected light, and by this beating, the light of Chokhmah will say, fall, and we'll say the records and the reflected light of Chokhmah inside, in the toch of the Kli, they were the light of Keter, or the light of Binah, and the Kli, for which was before Chokhmah, become vessels for who? For Partzuf Ab. Hence, we should distinguish in these vessels, before the Partzuf Ab emerged, three discernments. What's written in item 40 above? But the Keter does not have one to beat its record in its ascent. Therefore, its vessel was not yet completed. 40. When the screen comes to the complete refinement, where it was already refined due to the shorish, the root, yes? Also. And now it is similar to the emanator. Here, its forces have been depleted, and it has no longer a striking of coupling to lower reflected light in the Kli of Keter after emptying from light. Therefore, its matter of Kli is not completed, because there are no sparks from the descending reflected light to diminish it. Here, a preparation is made for the vessels of Partzuf Ab, which I need when Partzuf Ab, the light of Chokhmah of the Kli of Keter, then I need there to be a vessel of Chokhmah. When the light of Bina of the Kli of Chokhmah, I need there a Kli of Bina. So he says, from the couplings that were made in the descending reflected light, sparks fall, the vessels fall with the lights of the small degree and the great degree. The light of Malchut in the vessel of Zeranpin. So he asks, in the light of Malchut, what light comes in the light of Malchut to diminish it? There is nothing to diminish it. In truth, we need to know that finally there is an immense difference between Galgalta, which is phase 4, and Ab, which is phase 3. We are saying here, the light of Chokhmah in the vessel of Keter. Is Chokhmah on the level of Keter? If so, it should have been, even in Malchut, some degree that is smaller, meaning Chokhmah. Even Keter of Chokhmah, I need to say that is easier than Malchut of Keter. If so, it should have said in Malchut of Keter, there's also some diminishing. And there isn't, because of the departure of the light. But according to the logic, dictates there should be a true phase 3, meaning Keter of Chokhmah needs to be smaller than Nefesh of Keter. And that's not so. And what does he say? The preparation. Preparing as much as possible. Impossible. But that's not the real comparison. But let's say more than that, it cannot be. Beforehand, the Partzuf Galgalta illuminated in 5 levels. The tastes, the tamim are called keter, the nikudot are called chokhmah below, until it was completely refined. When it was completely refined, we have 5 levels remaining. Tamim, nikudot. And all these vessels go through to Partzuf Ab. When I say the light of chokhmah in the vessel of keter, I need to say the light of chokhmah in the vessel of keter, and these are really vessels of Galgalta that were once keter, and now they only have chokhmah. But for us to not get confused, I'll say it this way: in the vessel of keter of Ab illuminates the light of keter. Which keter? Keter of chokhmah, not chokhmah of chokhmah. Don't get confused. We just confused keter. So I must say, where's the keter of the light of keter illuminate for Ab? In the kli of keter. It's kli of keter. Where does it illuminate the light of chokhmah in the kli of keter? This keter, which is called keter of the phase of chokhmah, and illuminates in the kli of keter, that you once had a light of keter. That's called the light of chokhmah in the kli of keter. For who? In who? In the Partzuf Galgalta. But in Ab, it is called the light of keter in the kli of keter. That's its keter. It doesn't need any more. It will never need more. So, for where is it called the light of chokhmah in the kli of keter? The kli of keter of the Partzuf Galgalta that had the level of keter, and what does it have now? Only the keter of chokhmah. So I come and I say chokhmah in the vessel of keter. This I should specifically say in the old vessels. In the new vessels, I should say that it's the light of keter in the vessel of keter. Don't say it that way. The exchange of lights that we're saying in the value of Partzuf Galgalta, say, according to the Partzuf Galgalta, there's a departure, and not in its own value. We said before not to get confused. He is speaking of what he wants to imply to us, not just to speak. You need to know the whole Partzuf Galgalta is the light of keter. There's no division here. Only one. Take into account, we say, each time the light is refined, it departs. If so, when I say the Partzuf, or the light of phase 3, which fell to phase 4, so I say light of chokhmah in the vessel of keter. Don't forget. But that's all? Yes.
Whereas when you say that Partzuf Ab comes in the vessel of keter, which he had in Partzuf keter, student that was in the Partzuf,
that was in the
Rabash, that the light of chokhmah that comes in the vessel of Galgalta, that these were once the light of keter. This is called the light of chokhmah in the vessel of keter. What haven't you heard? I'm saying again. Listen. There's a difference between saying everything is a level of keter or everything is a level of chokhmah. I'm not telling you that there's no diminution in Partzuf Galgalta. But it's not called diminution since everything. For example, I learned with you in part 5, if you remember, that it says, why does Havaya begin with Yud, Chokhmah, and downward? the tip of the Yud, Keter, is no longer, doesn't exist anymore. Why? Where do we begin? A complete Havaya from Yud and below. He comes and says, a vessel means a deficiency. So he says that when ta'amim, the flavors or taste, shines, the tip of the Yud, the ta'amim of Galgalta shines. Was there a deficiency? No. That degree was never, there was never a greater degree than it. When the ta'amim were refined, what's shown? Nekudot, dots. So he comes and tells us, what is the difference between Yud, K, and Vav, K? Yud is called male, He is called female, Vav is called male, He is called female. What's the difference here between male and female? Male is called a light that shines. That's called male, abundance. What is a female? A deficiency. There's no light there. Now, if you say that vessels, that letters are called vessels, are called deficiencies, called females, how do you say that Yud is called the female when you say that Yud is called the male? So he says this: when the ta'amim, the taste shines, is there a deficiency? No. So you find that in Keter, there is no deficiency there, no vessel. Afterwards, when the ta'amim are refined, nekudot shine, the dots. Nekudot that shines is called Yud, actual light, male. But there is already a deficiency there. So the ta'amim are lacking in them after they departed all the Patzuf Gagalta. This is called Hey. And then he says, Patzuf Ab shown. When the tastes were shining, there's also no deficiency. When the ta'amim are refined into that what was shining, Chokhmah of Ab. He already calls it Vav. Because for what reason is there an expansion already? Or deficiency? Meaning he lacked what was shining there. Well, we need to explain that. After the departure of Patzuf Ab, there is no light there. That is called Hey. He explains it in the... He doesn't want to... I don't want to get into it now. I want to show you that there is a deficiency there between the Nekudot and that taste of Keter. But what he wants for itself, the light of Chokhmah in the vessel of Keter, that's 3. Whereas here, 3 and 4, that's why there's a difference between them. Again, slowly, I don't understand your question. What is written here? What am I saying here that you're asking about?
According to this.
According to what? According to what? I'll tell you according to what. I'll say this. We have a rule. All the worlds, he says, are a seal and an imprint. As it emerged at the first time, so are all the worlds sealed, imprinted, all the Patzufim. Therefore, he asks, why do we begin once with speaking of the Sfirot? We begin with Keter, Chokhmah, Binah, and another time we begin with Chokhmah, Binah, Da'at, not from Keter. So he says, the first root that emerged from Patzuf Gargalta, I should have said, all the degrees extended after them begin from Keter as it was there. He says no. Why? Because when the light shines in the vessel, there's no distinction between the light and the vessel. That's why I cannot say that all the vessels are extended from it downward. They're already called vessels. There are still no vessels yet. But after Parzuf Golgotha departed, empty vessels remained. So when it was the vessel with the records were revealed in the first time, meaning in Parzuf Golgotha, so when we speak of vessels, even vessels of Asiyah, we go by this order. So I begin to speak from Keter, Chochmah, Bina. Now, when can I say that it was for the first time, that the vessel was impressed by the light that came now? That was in Parzuf Ab. That for the vessels in the form of seal and imprint for the vessels of Parzuf Golgotha. And what light was it? The light of Chochmah in the vessel of Keter. That's why there's a law. When speaking of lights, the root of the seal and imprint is in Parzuf Ab. We speak of the light of Chochmah, since the light of Keter wasn't there. When we begin to speak of vessels, when were there vessels? After the departure of the lights. That was in the vessel of Golgotha, when there was a record of Keter in the vessel of Keter. That's why we speak of the vessels of Golgotha. And this we say even in the world of Asiyah. What are you asking about this? Again, he says, each degree, it's real vessels, the old vessels, not the new vessels. The new vessels can always be mixed. But the old vessels, that's what he says everywhere. The vessels are essentially the old vessels, not new vessels. So I'm telling you, when there was a coupling in Parzuf Ab, reflected light came out. Where does Keter of Chochmah shine? In Keter of Ab or not? Is there a light of Keter in the vessel of Keter or not? Now, that Keter of Chochmah, that shines in the old vessel, what did it have? Keter of Chochmah or Keter of Keter? Keter of Keter is called Chochmah for it, not in its own vessel.
Would it illuminate?
Each degree consists of two vessels. That's a law. That's an unbreakable law. From old vessels and new vessels. We speak mainly of the old vessels. The new vessels don't merit a name. They're mixed. That's one. Previously, Parzuf Golgotha, first Parzuf Golgotha expanded. It shone lights in its own vessels. Then came the clash between inner and surrounding. There's a rule. Each new form is a new face, new discernment. We have Parzuf Golgotha, where the record of direct light and reflected light shines there without anything. We have Parzuf Golgotha that received the clash of inner and surrounding, from which the light departed. We always speak of the new form. This is why we learn that empty vessels remain in Parzuf Golgotha. Afterwards, we learn something else, that when the second Parzuf came out, it has the empty vessels of the upper Parzuf, and it has vessels for itself, which it makes now, a coupling by striking, direct light and reflected light, and the new light emerges now, which is called new vessels. Now, if I permit myself, if we say all the empty vessels of Patzuf Galgalta went to Patzuf Ab, if the empty vessels we still have Patzuf Galgalta, or they all moved to Patzuf Ab, I can say they remained in Patzuf Galgalta and were filled, and I can say that they moved to Patzuf Ab and were filled. What contradiction? We learn Patzuf Galgalta was refined. The screen and the records rose. Where to? To the Rosh of Galgalta, the head at the top of Galgalta. What was in the screen that went up? Records. 4 of coarseness of clothing, 3 of coarseness. Patzuf Galgalta made a coupling, and Patzuf Galgalta drew light. So, on which face 3 of coarseness is Ab called? Who filled the empty vessels? Patzuf Ab, I'm asking, or Patzuf Galgalta? Patzuf Galgalta. On what coarseness? Ab. This is what he calls the inner Ab. What is the outer Ab, the external one? He says, we need to understand the benefit from the surrounding light that clashes with the screen because it wants to shine. Who doesn't let it? The screen of Tabel says, I don't want to receive. So he wonders who will receive the rest. What will eventually happen? What shone also departed. So what's the benefit? What did it benefit and what did he receive? He wants all the light to be, all 100%. We learned that even what he had, he lost. So he comes and says, no, that the screen of Tabel is always called the ending Malchut. What is the ending Malchut? He says, I don't want to receive anymore. That's why the light must depart within the surrounding light, as surrounding light. What is Malchut of the Rosh? The Malchut that copulates, makes a coupling. What does it mean, copulates? She makes a coupling by striking and says, I want to receive according to the screen. As much as I can bestow, I want to receive. And she receives. And we say, as much as she can receive in order to bestow, she receives until she comes into the Malchut of Tabu, called the ending Malchut, meaning if she receives, it will be in order to receive. Those 2 things are clear? Now, he comes and tells us, the surrounding light did a great thing. Malchut of Tabu, which is called the ending Malchut. Meaning who says, I don't want to receive anymore. Why? If I receive, I will receive in order to receive. That Malchut became the copulating Malchut. That Malchut later says, I do want to receive. What for? Because I want to bestow. How so? Because you understand that if he performs an act like that, and the surrounding light benefits. So we say this. The screen of Tabu, called the ending Malchut, rose to the Rosh of Galgalta. She was incorporated with Malchut of the Rosh, called coarseness from below upward, who herself can make a coupling by striking. This is written in part 3, answer 210. We find